Hello, everybody. I am here. I'm just making sure. Yeah, I'm just making sure that I shared this on Facebook. Uh, so, I guess somebody is watching, but they haven't said hello yet. Let me do what I have forgotten to do. Specifically, take away the promo. There we go. Now you can see me. And I can see you too. So, this is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. I'm moving a little slowly because I just did 2 streams and this is my 3rd stream. Anyway, the topic of this stream is the fecklessness of Democratic Party leaders. News broke today of people starting to pay attention, close attention, to the plans of the Republicans that they warned about in the run-up to the election to do a debt ceiling crisis unless unless the Democrats do something during the lame duck to head off the possibility of a debt ceiling crisis. Title of this piece, which have I actually shown that to you yet? No, I'm about to show it to you. So, the title is, okay, this piece appeared in Common Dreams. Its title is, quote, "A Massive Mistake, colon." Okay, and then, alarm as Dems cast out on lame duck debt ceiling deal. Assuming, of course, the headline assumes that there has to be a deal. Why would there have to be a deal? Why? This is by Jessica Corbett, November 16, 2022, from Common Dreams. With Republicans widely accepted to take control of the U.S. House of Representatives 2023, Democrats are under pressure to make the most of the lame duck session, but raising the debt ceiling doesn't seem to be on the table. Increasing fears of what that means for social programs in the GOP's crosshairs. Ah, yes. The Senate Democratic whip, the party's second-ranking member in the chamber, told Bloomberg that they don't plan to use the budget reconciliation process that was employed earlier this year to avoid a filibuster and pass the Inflation Reduction Act without any GOP support. Now notice, they could still do that. This is the lame duck. Democrats have nominal control of the House. It's a 50-50 Senate. They can still pass legislation if all the Democrats in the Senate decide to support this particular legislation. The Senate Democratic whip, who is, of course, Dick Durbin, okay, of Illinois, the party's second-ranking member in the chamber, said they don't plan to use the budget reconciliation process that was employed earlier this year to avoid a filibuster and pass the Inflation Reduction Act without any GOP support. Now, look, they still have a reconciliation bill left under the rules. They can use it to pass, they can use it to repeal the debt ceiling altogether. They can use it to repeal the debt ceiling altogether. Now, the Republicans can come right back and put the debt ceiling in because they only control the House, and the Senate can block any debt ceiling bill, and Joe Biden can veto any debt ceiling bill. So if the Democrats pass one now, it's going to be in there, and once the people see that the debt ceiling bill just means that there won't be any more debt ceiling crises, that's going to be the permanent state of affairs. There won't be any debt ceiling constraint on federal spending anymore. That would remove the power of the Republican Party to extract concessions from Democrats holding the threat of closing down the government over their heads. So why won't they do that? That would not be done this year by reconciliation. It takes too much time. Senator Dick Durbin said of lifting the debt ceiling before the Treasury's current borrowing limit is reached, which is projected to be sometime next year. We have 3 weeks and there is too much else on the agenda. I say, screw that. This is number one on the agenda. Taking that power away from them is the number one thing on this agenda. What else do they think they have to do other than this? What other business could be more important than this? Why is Dick Durbin such a fool? Back in the early 2000s, he pointed out to someone who was objecting to the way the banks were setting up the bankruptcy bill. And he was moaning that the banks run the place. If the banks run the place, it's only because of cowards like Dick Durbin. The banks do run the place because Dick Durbin won't stand up and be counted. David Rosen tweeted, Biden and Senate Democrats have decided to leave the economic equivalent of a nuclear arsenal on their front porch for Republicans to take and use as they see fit. This was quoting an Eric Wasson tweet. Eric Wasson said, news, Senator Durbin tells me debt ceiling reconciliation with only Dems not happening this year. McConnell indicated bipartisan not happening either. Well, we certainly don't expect that Mitch is going to allow anything at all to pass the Senate in the form of a bill this year that could possibly give Democrats credit for doing anything. I mean, Mitch McConnell is going to block everything. So if the Democrats expect to pass anything at all, they have to do reconciliation. They have no choice. They must do reconciliation because they ain't getting any bipartisan cooperation. Why would McConnell want to be cooperative at all? He's got nothing to lose by not being cooperative. They just had an election. He won. He lost control of the Senate, but he won his own seat. And the Republicans at least won the House and are in a position to investigate the president, impeach the president, and in various ways harass the president in 2023 and 2024 to make sure the Democrats fail in the next 2 years. That's what McConnell's been doing for a decade. Why would he change that strategy? You can't give him enough money to change that strategy because he lives to be the block that ruins democratic accomplishments. Okay. He lives for that. Anyway, going further, even if the Democrats tried the budget reconciliation approach, they may not have the votes in the Senate, in which Vice President Kamala Harris breaks ties, thanks to Senator Joe Manchin, who has repeatedly held up his own party's agenda over the past 2 years while insisting on bipartisanship. I think that Joe Manchin should be put on a conference call with the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and Chuck Schumer, who will tell him that if he expects to get any party support at all in his next run for the Senate in 2024, he better damn well knuckle under this time and do everything he can to pass this budget reconciliation approach. That opposition to a budget reconciliation bill to get rid of the debt ceiling will not be tolerated by the party hierarchy again. This may not work, but the news should go out to Joe Manchin right now that the Senate is still controlled by Democrats, and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is still in a position to withhold all money from Manchin, all manner of support from Manchin, backed also by the DNC, if he doesn't go party line on this one. And the same message should be put out to Kyrsten Sinema. I don't think it should go to reconciliation, Manchin said Tuesday of raising the debt limit. Of course, Manchin could return the threat and say, look, I'll just go over the Republican Party. And he can say that until December 6th. Because if Raphael Warnock is elected, it'll be 51-49, and then they can afford to lose Manchin's vote. Of course, Manchin and Sinema may stick together and say, look, we're not going to go for reconciliation. Fine. Let them not go for reconciliation. He says about raising the debt limit, my goodness, it's something we've always worked together on. That is bullshit. The Republicans have extracted concessions previously. They didn't work together on those other debt ceiling crises. Those crises were created by the Republicans. If they were working together, there wouldn't have been any crises. If they were working together, there would have been clean debt ceiling bills lifted. If they were working together, the debt ceiling would have been repealed altogether, because these crises are no good for the country. Yes, They work together on all these other debt ceiling crises to cut the heart out of good programs. Manchin says it should be bipartisan. We've got to pay our bills. But the bottom line is we have to get serious about getting our financial house in order. Biden should tell Manchin that he has the authority to mint $100 trillion platinum coin in order to pay our bills. And that he doesn't need Manchin's approval to do that or the Republican approval to do that. And that if they don't pass a reconciliation bill, either raising the debt limit or eliminating the debt limit entirely, then he's going to use that power and the power of Manchin to negotiate bipartisan deals on this with Mitch McConnell is going to be gone forever. That's what Biden needs to do. In fact, I don't even think Biden needs to do that. I think Biden should mint that coin tomorrow and then give a speech to the American people and then say bye-bye. Then say bye-bye to debt ceiling crises. Tell the American people we're not going to have any more debt ceiling crises where the Republicans are extracting cuts in spending for the people by threatening to shut down the government. Because what I just did was to take that power away from them by minting $100 trillion coin. I cannot spend $100 trillion. I can only spend the money that's been appropriated by Congress. And that money includes previous spending that was funded by selling Treasury debt. And that includes past spending this year that was done also through the use of Treasury debt. And that $100 trillion will also be good for spending the money that Congress has already appropriated in the budget. And I don't need any approval for that from Congress because Congress has already passed the 1995 coin law allowing me to do this. I have sent a directive to the U.S. Mint to produce this platinum coin. It is being done as we speak. It will be transported to the Federal Reserve, deposited in the Mint's public enterprise account, which according to law, the Secretary of the Treasury can sweep the profits, the coin seigniorage, into the Treasury spending account. The coin seigniorage will be nearly the $100 trillion. The $100 trillion minus the expenses of minting the coin and getting the coin up to the New York Federal Reserve for deposit. That $100 trillion will then be swept into the Treasury spending account, and it will be there, and it can be used to pay down our national debt, any interest on the debt, and to pay any further appropriations that Congress has made that has not yet been spent. So Manchin, if you're opposed to my doing this, then what you've got to do now is to turn around and go along and talk to Kirsten as well and point out to her that if we don't join the rest of the caucus on this, you're going to be faced with 100 trillion platinum coin. In fact, I take that back. I've already made that move anyway. I will have the $100 trillion in the Treasury spending account within 2 days. And Congress cannot stop it right now because the Senate is in our control, and we're not going to let the House stop this by voting against it. It's going to be there. And I don't even need your consent to use this money to avert the debt ceiling crisis. But if you want to look like a good Joe, what you could do is combine with all the Democrats to get rid of the debt ceiling law, the debt limit law, immediately and for good. That would be constructive. We won't even have to talk about it anymore. And I wouldn't have to use any of that $100 trillion to pay off things. I could keep it in the Treasury spending account. I wouldn't have to use it. I could sell debt instruments. By the way, if I don't sell any more debt instruments, your corporate supporters are going to be very unhappy with you. Because with 100 trillion in the bank, I don't have to sell any more debt instruments. I can just starve the corporate sector of debt instruments. They won't have a safe harbor anymore. Play ball, Joe, or that's going to happen, and you won't get a bit of Democratic Party support for your run in 2024. And Sinema, she might as well leave now and go to that plush corporate job she's been dreaming about.
I need cake.
Yeah, let her eat cake, says Bonnie. Will Stansel says, anytime you start to feel like the government is in good hands, or the people in charge know what they're doing, or politics is some kind of masterly fencing duel between experts, or we shouldn't put Joe Manchin on a boat to the outer Pacific, we should put him on a slow boat to China, folks. Just read about the debt ceiling again. That was a quote tweet, of another quote from Ben White at Morning Money. Ben. News without Adam Cancrin. White House sees little or no path to lame duck Congress boosting the debt limit, raising fear of a scary fight next year. Quote, we'd love to do the debt limit. That doesn't magically create the votes to get the debt limit done. That is a Politico quote on November 16th. Durbin said to Bloomberg that Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is, quote, continuing to negotiate, unquote, with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who was reelected to his position on Wednesday, in hopes of reaching a debt limit agreement this year. However, if McConnell holds out, it sets up his party for a fight in 2023. Durbin, that is bullshit. Because Biden doesn't have to negotiate. Biden always negotiates, so he loses. He never negotiates so he wins. He doesn't have to negotiate. All he has to do is mint that $100 trillion coin. When asked Tuesday about the possibility of increasing a limit during a lame duck session, McConnell said, quote, I don't think the debt limit issue is until sometime next year, end quote. That's what McConnell is going to do. The issue arises sometime next year and gives him the power to extract concessions on laws and spending that have already been passed. The Republicans have no trouble doing that. They have no trouble doing blackmail. They have no trouble taking money away from I shouldn't say money, but food away from the mouths of babes. According to Politico, President Joe Biden's administration has all but given up on making a deal this year, with one senior official saying, "We'd love to do the debt limit. That doesn't magically create the votes to get the debt limit done." And Catherine Rampell, I did some old blogs on her that were doozies, said, "This is not good. No, it's not good. It's feckless. Stop negotiating with them. Mint that coin once and for all. Remove the possibility of any debt ceiling crisis." I'm speaking to you, Joe, right now. I know you could have that $100 trillion coin minted, have that money in the Treasury spending account in the next few days. Then you won't have to issue any more debt at all. Issuing debt will be optional. Not only that, as you pay off the debt that is falling due each day, as Treasury pays off that debt each day, guess what? You'd be moving further and further away from the debt ceiling because there would be less and less debt to pay back. You could pay off all the debt that was due next year, which would be trillions of dollars. You'd probably pay off at least half the national debt in 1 year. You'd be a hero for paying off half the national debt, okay, in 1 year. The public could see it declining day by day if they want to watch the daily Treasury statement. But more important than that, the debt ceiling we haven't even reached yet. If you pay off half the debt in 1 year, that debt ceiling is so far from the debt we owe, you can issue all kinds of debt instruments at that point if you want, and not worry about the debt ceiling at all. Ineffectively, doing the $100 trillion coin makes the debt ceiling a dead issue. Makes it a dead issue. Make it a dead issue, Joe. That would be enough to ensure your reelection. The Republicans would have to shut up about how the debt is so big. Because within a year, I don't know the exact figure, it might be a third of it. It might be as much as a half of it. Why? Because we pay off something like, again, I forget the exact figure, but in a single year, we pay off $54 trillion worth of debt. Now, we only have about $32 trillion worth of debt. So how can we pay $54 trillion? Because, folks, a lot of what we pay back is rotating debt. It's short-term debt that we pay back and then we issue again. Pay back and then we issue again every single day. Now, there is longer-term debt that we don't pay back within a year. And that debt, of course, is going to remain and will be paid back when it falls due. But the point here is that we can pay back all the debt that falls due next year. And that means the debt we owe would be very, very far from the debt ceiling. I do believe I'm right when I say we're going to pay roughly 50% of the federal debt off in 1 year. Instead of 32 trillion in debt, we'd have only 16 trillion in debt. And then how are the Republicans going to terrorize the public because the national debt is so high? The answer is they won't be able to. And the very act of minting the $1 trillion coin is going to illustrate that the federal government creates the federal money. And there's no other money in the United States, no other legal tender except the federal money. Margaret Thatcher was wrong when she said there is no government money, there is only your tax money. That was bullshit. You want to see the government money? Mint that $100 trillion coin. No idiot is ever going to say that again. As the outlet reported, although there is grave risk to the economy, the gun is in Republican hands, said one Biden advisor, summing up the administration's view of the political stakes on the debt limit. And there is little question as to who will get blamed for this. A White House spokesperson noted that congressional Republicans voted 3 times to lift the debt ceiling under former President Donald Trump. The debt ceiling should never be a matter of political brinksmanship, the spokesperson said. Congress must once again responsibly address the debt ceiling before its expiration. Yes, congressional Republicans voted 3 times to lift the debt ceiling under President Donald Trump, as did congressional Democrats. What do you think would have happened if the congressional Democrats had refused to lift the debt ceiling under Nancy Pelosi, which they could have done? They had control of the House in 2019 and 2020. What if they wanted to put Trump in that position? Do you think that Trump would have sat still? Or would Trump have minted the platinum coin himself? Because however stupid Trump is, however emotional he is, however egoistic he is, however immoral he is not feckless. You, Mr. President, are feckless. How do we know? Because when the American Rescue Plan was being passed, and the parliamentarians said, this cannot go into reconciliation bills, you replied, I respect the parliamentarian. And you used that as an excuse to allow $15 an hour to be cut out of that bill. You never took the blame for that. No one ever placed the blame upon you for that. But it was your blame, and it was Nancy Pelosi's blame, and it was the Senate's blame. Because between the 3 of you, you could have said, we respect the parliamentarian of the Senate, but she's an advisor, and we don't think her advice is right in this particular instance. We're not going to do the cruel thing that the Republicans did in a similar situation in 2003 when they fired the parliamentarian. We're not going to do that cruel thing, but what we are going to do is simply reject her advice and pass this bill with a $15 an hour provision in it. And then you could have pressured Manchin and Sinema and the other 8 Democratic senators who were sub rosa opposed to that, including your good friends, Chris Coons and Ted Kaufman. You could have gotten them all to say yes to this bill. But you didn't want to do that because you didn't care about people getting to make $15 an hour 3 years from then, 4 years from then, not until 2025. We see you, Joe Biden. We see you clearly. We see you as both ungenerous and feckless. It's time to end. It's time to end the austerity for working people. It's time to end the austerity for the middle class that you have been in favor of imposing on people for so long. It's time for you to act responsibly in the interests of the people. It's time for you to deliver people what they need. It's time for you to recognize that if the next 2 years are a mess, your chances or the chances of your Democratic successor actually winning in 2024 are nil. Are nil. This time around, you escaped a disaster because the young people overwhelmingly voted for you. They're not going to do that in 2024 if you keep delivering excuses why you can't do this or that or the other thing. We all know that you have the authority to cancel student debt under the Education Act. We know that when you just tried to cancel student debt, you used the wrong authority. Many of us think you deliberately used the wrong authority, and now you're hiding behind the courts for not giving students relief. We all know that, Joe. We're going to spread that all around for the next 2 years. We will never cease to spread that truth or to spread the other truths of your austerity mindedness, lack of real fiscal responsibility, and sheer fecklessness. We've had enough of that. We didn't elect you for that purpose. We elected you because you would not bring up. We wanted you to defend a democracy and not bring us another Trump. And here you are on track again to lose the real resistance. The real resistance to people like Trump is to have successful government that delivers to people what they need. You still have the means to do that. If you mint this $100 trillion coin, the Republicans would lose a very valuable weapon, which is to propagandize about how the government doesn't have the money to do this or that or the other thing. You can take that weapon away from them because with that $100 trillion in the bank, you will always have the money to spend what the mandates of Congress are in the coming years. Not forever, of course, but you can always mint another $100 trillion coin then, can't you? Joan McCarter of Daily Cost says, memo to Democrats thinking reason will prevail or debt ceiling. Have you seen the House GOP? Look, Joan McCarter I know who you are too. You never say a blinking thing against the Democrats or against the Democratic president. It's time to get on Joe Biden's butt to get that $100 billion coin minted. Have you seen the House GOP? Well, another key question is, have you seen daily costs? Vote blue no matter who? Come on. Join me in getting him to mint this $100 trillion coin. He shouldn't even have been talking about it to Congress. What he should have done before the last election should have been to mint that coin. The minute he heard the Republicans talking about debt ceiling crisis, he should have said, oh yeah? Here's the $100 trillion coin. Now let's see your debt ceiling crisis. Jesus. Biden vowed last week that under no circumstances will he go along with GOP attempts to cut the social safety nets program, saying, that's not on the table. I will not do that. You've said various things like that for a long time, Joe. You always cave. Yes, what you'll do is you'll go in and you'll make a deal with them, and basically you'll say, I'm never going to cut social safety net programs, but here's a bunch of other things I might cut so we can compromise. That's what you'll do, because that's what you types always do. You don't have to compromise. However, fears are mounting Biden could be forced to strike a deal. He is not forced to strike a deal because he can mint the $100 trillion coin. He could be forced to strike a deal like then President Barack Obama did in 2011 to prevent the first ever default in U.S. history. Obama didn't have to make a deal either in 2011. I believe in the summer of 2011, he was too ignorant to know about the coin. But by 2012 to 2013, he knew about the coin and he lied about it. What he said then was he said, well, if I minted the coin, it's going to ruin the whole market for U.S. treasuries and we won't be able to sell any U.S. treasuries anymore. He lied about that. Because what would have happened if he minted the $100 trillion coin? Then the U.S. would have gone right on paying back its debt and right on spending congressional appropriations. And that debt would have gotten scarcer and scarcer. And then demand in the Treasury bond market would have jumped sky high because there would have been no new debt being issued. Obama had to have known that. Somebody had to have told him that or suggested that to him. I can't believe he was so dumb as not to have realized that. As Fox's Dylan Matthews wrote Wednesday, President Biden could also use executive power to subvert the ceiling, either by asserting that ignoring the limit is the least unconstitutional option he can take. Oh, here's Dylan Matthews coming out with minting the coin. I didn't even know he was going to do that. He can take, compared to ignoring tax and spending passed by Congress, to suggest these two alternatives, that he used the 14th Amendment, ignoring the limit, because the 14th Amendment supersedes it. Yeah, he could have taken that position. But that's nowhere near as good as minting the platinum coin. He says a platinum coin worth trillions of dollars. I say a platinum coin whose face value is large enough to not only pay for all current spending, not only pay for repayment of the whole national debt, but also pay for deficit spending for many years to come. That's what you do. You don't mint $1 trillion coin or a $2 trillion coin or a $5 trillion coin. You solve the problem. And the way to solve the problem is by minting $100 trillion coin or a 200 million coin or a $1 quadrillion coin. Whatever will kill this issue for years and years and years and years to come. Because this should not be a part of our national government, this Debt Ceiling Act. It makes no sense in the current context. It is a problem that has to be solved, not kicked down the road like every other can you guys kick down the road. But despite these options, a full-on repeat of the 2011 standoff looks unnervingly possible. How about the 2012 to 2013 standoff? That ended with the Budget Control Act, which the Congressional Budget Office estimated would reduce the deficit by $2.1 trillion over a decade through massive obligatory spending cuts. Yes, that caused, or certainly contributed to, the longest recovery from a recession since World War II. Congress later undid some of the cuts included in the BCA, yeah, like for the Defense Department. But Mark Goldwine, Senior Vice President of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget and a leading budget analyst in D.C., tells me that that total wound up being around $1.3 trillion. All of those savings were achieved not through raising taxes, but reducing spending. And almost all that reducing spending came from a relatively narrow slice of the federal budget known as discretionary spending. Matthews noted that according to a Center on Budget and Policy Priorities report focused on 2010 to 21, economic security, healthcare, and scientific research programs were close to stagnant, failing by 4% or less, but funding for environmental protection in parks fell by 15%, general government operations by 26%, education and job training by 14%, diplomacy and foreign aid by 19%, agricultural, energy, and commerce by 19%. Austerity, that's what happened. Some advocates of Democrats taking advantage of the lame duck session have pointed out that Manchin and Senator Kirsten Sinema, the two key opponents of fully scrapping the filibuster, have supported an exception for lifting the debt ceiling. Okay, Bonnie wants to say something here. I will give her an opportunity in just a moment. I can't really read her writing, the note she's passing me. Anyway, the two key opponents of fully scrapping the filibuster have supported an exception for lifting the debt ceiling. Here's a tweet from the Bold Progressives group. A year ago, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema voted for a filibuster carve-out to raise the debt limit. Less than a year ago, progressive strategist David Rosen tweeted on Wednesday. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped something here. A year ago, Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema voted for a filibuster carve-out to raise the debt limit. Republicans once again are promising to use it to hold our economy hostage. It would be a massive mistake to let the filibuster stand in the way of eliminating it for good. Of course it would be. But it's not a mistake for them because they want to use the filibuster carve-out to pass what they want to pass. And they don't want to pass either eliminating the debt ceiling, or getting a carve out that doesn't get them something. They, as much as the Republicans, are holding our economy hostage. And they should pay the price in 2024. With the risk of a cataclysmic default higher than ever, they should be pressured to back a reconciliation bill to do the same thing. The White House is giving up before even trying. Of course, it's feckless. The looming debt ceiling fight and the stakes of both U.S. programs and the global economy has led to some Democrats to go beyond raising the limit while they still have control of Congress. Democrats should fight back by making this lame duck session of Congress the most productive in decades. Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote Saturday in a New York Times opinion piece, we can start by lifting the debt ceiling now to block Republicans from taking our economy hostage next year. You can start by eliminating the debt limit law in the first place. Get the hell rid of it so it's not there. She says, I'd get rid of the debt ceiling altogether, quote unquote, she told NBC News' Chuck Todd the following day, arguing that it serves no function except to create leverage for people who are willing to blow up the economy. Now, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who blames lame duck action to boost the debt ceiling, has previously endorsed abolishing the limit. Biden opposes that proposal. Yes, he proposes that proposal. He opposes that proposal. If he opposes proposals that could solve this problem and subjects our economy to many billions of dollars of loss, he needs to be impeached for that. He needs to be impeached for imposing that kind of damage on the economy and the American people out of his own stubbornness and fecklessness and lack of real fiscal responsibility. Real fiscal responsibility is spending federal money for the public purpose. And it certainly is consistent with the public purpose to pass things like a minimum wage that's a living wage, and to pass things like augmenting Social Security for the elderly so the elderly can live a dignified life, okay, and not have to basically live from Social Security check to Social Security check. Our Social Security benefits are half the pension benefits, okay, in Europe. That's because their politicians support a good social welfare system, and our politicians will not do that, will not provide for Medicare for all, will not provide a decent social safety net for the American people. And Joe Biden is one of those politicians who is in step with that. Okay, folks, that's it, except for your comments, which I will entertain.
Please send this to everyone.
Oh, please do share this to everyone, because everyone really has to know about the proposal to mint $100 trillion coin. Not the small potatoes that Dylan Matthews had mentioned. He knows about the coin. He's written about it. He's written quite a lot about it. He wasn't among the early proponents of the coin, but he was pretty early. The first proponent of the coin was Carlos Mucha, writing under the name, of Beowulf. The second proponent of the coin, and the person who kept the proposal alive until June of 2011, when it became current again, was yours truly, Joseph M. Firestone. By the way, I'm still the only one who has written a full-length book about the platinum coin and all its implications. You'll find but that book, at Amazon. It's another Kindle book. It sells for $9, and 99 cents. Every time they have a debt ceiling, it becomes relevant. Every time they have a debt ceiling crisis. So please also do note that I've written that book, as well as the Declarations of Dependence book that I talked about in an earlier stream. Tonight,
Send this to Biden and his wife.
yes, please tweet this at Joe Biden and tweet this at Joe Biden, as well. And tweet this at everybody in the Congress. Make them understand the best solution to debt ceiling crises, the best solution that does not involve congressional action, is the minting of the $100 trillion coin. By the way, I wasn't the first one to propose the $100 trillion coin. The first one to propose it was actually Stephanie Kelton. In case people don't know, she doesn't talk much about that now, because of course, minting the $100 trillion coin was a proposal that gained some ridicule during that period of time. Hopefully, we've matured enough to see that it is a solution to a problem that works and that ends the debt terrorism that we all are living under. Please buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Joe.Firestone, or make a contribution at patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. Either way, I will greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you very much for staying. And I'm out of here till tomorrow, and I'll have 3 more streams for you on various subjects. I'll probably be talking, at least in one of those streams, about the latest results. Of course, I've already told you the Republicans have now cleared the bar for the House and will have control of the House. I'll just check right now before I say goodbye and see if any more races have been called. Okay. Speak of the devil, Jeffrey. Well, Jeffrey Skelly. Let's see what Jeffrey Skelly said. Early tonight, ABC News projected the Republicans have reached 218 seats in the House, guaranteeing them a majority at the start of the 118th Congress in January. Now the question is, how large a majority will the GOP have As things stand, Republicans have 218 seats and Democrats have 210. Let me see something here. The GOP may eventually add Colorado's 3rd district to its ledger, which would get the Republicans to 219 seats. There, Republican Lauren Boebert has enough of a lead that Democrat Adam Frisch will probably need to win around 2/3 of the outstanding vote to overtake her. That's not out of the question, but while this race could be headed for a recount, the candidate in the lead tends to win unless the race is super close. It is super close now. It's 1,122 votes. Meanwhile, Democrats have an edge in Alaska's at-large district, which will be decided by ranked choice voting. They have a big edge. Mary Peltola is almost sure to win that one. The confidence in her winning that one is greater than the confidence in Lauren Boebert actually winning her race. The Republicans are favorites in California 3rd District, where Republican Kevin Kiley leads. It would take a Democratic overperformance for Kiley to end up losing. So this probably gets the GOP to 220 seats. On the flip side, Democrats are probably favored in California's 47th and 49th district, which would get them to 213 seats. In the 47th, the Democratic Representative Katie Porter has a nearly 3-point edge over Republican Scott Baugh, who will need to win around 60% of the remaining votes to catch her. Similarly, in the 49th district, but Mike Levin has a 5-point advantage over Republican Brian Marriott, who will need to win an unrealistic share of the remaining vote to catch up. That leaves 2 California seats where things are more in doubt. Democrat Adam Gray has a small lead in the 13th district, but only about 2/3 of the expected vote has been reported. So that's basically a toss-up still. In the 22nd district, Republican Representative David Valdeo leads, but not quite half the expected vote is in, and could take weeks to count the rest. Nathaniel Rakich says also later. Earlier tonight, ABC News projected. No, I read that already. So the last thing to read is the news from Rakich at 9:15 p.m. Speaker of the Devil Jeffrey, you said it was unrealistic to expect Republican Brian Marriott to defeat a Democrat, Mike Levin, in California's 49th district. And lo and behold, ABC News reports that Levin is projected to win. That brings Democrats up to 211 seats. So there it is. It looks like Republicans may end up with 220 or 221 seats, and Dems with 214 seats or 215 seats, or maybe even 216 seats, but that's probably the maximum at this time that they're going to end up with. I will make one more refresh of this page to see if any more news has come in. So that's the last for tonight. I'm going to end right now. Kay says, "Good night, Joe. I love you, and Bonnie too. And we love you as well, Kay. Thank you for coming. Good night, everyone."